There's so many things about Elestrals you may or may not know, so today, in the Elestrals Emporium, let's venture to our historical section and take a deep dive into changes in Elestria and why they happened. This is the history of Elestrals. We know about normal casting and special casting, but did you know before they were called something completely different? Before the public playtesting began, such core mechanics were something far more complicated with much more potential. Today we're doing a deep dive into all the ways us as casters could have been calling forth our favorite critters instead of simply casting them. This is Greek Enchantment Explained. So long ago in a video far, far away, YouTuber J Johnny voiced how confusing Elestral's wording was. This prompted A-Drive to share the scrap mechanics, Alpha Enchantment and Omega Enchantment, in the official Discord about how they had worked hard to minimize how complicated it used to be. We saw examples such as Jolton getting its search off of Alpha Enchanting, or Blazerus getting its special ascend off of Omega Enchanting, making it seem as though they'd be Alpha Enchanting would be normal casting, and Omega Enchanting would have been special casting. But to better help us understand the mechanics, I thought it might be better to go directly to the source for the information. So Dan, can you explain what exactly was the idea behind Alpha and Omega Enchanting?
So when we were developing Elestrals, we found that we were kind of loading the term enchant and enchanting to mean a lot of different things, which we eventually solved with the terminology addition of casting. But previously, you would enchant a card from your hand to the field, and it would remain enchanted as it existed on the field. So replace cast or play or summon or whatever the term you would use in any other game, we were using the word enchanting. So we ended up using that word too many times, and it had too many meanings, and I thought that got confusing. So again, to clarify, we replaced it with the word cast. But at one point in development, we were debating calling, a normal cast an alpha cast, and then, a special cast being an omega cast, and an ascension being a delta, a delta enchantment. I think I said cast the whole time, but alpha enchantment, omega enchantment, delta enchantment, things like that. We basically just take the terms that we had, replace them with, alpha, omega, delta, etc. enchanting. That was kind of the thought.
Well, it's good to see that we got that right, because, that just goes to show how much love and care that was put into the project, that even though the idea was turned into something else, it still kept its core mechanic of what it should have been. So it's good to know that we can still kind of, look at that and understand, what it transformed into. So Dan, in your response, you said the word delta. Were there any other ideas as to whether or not you're going to add other things such as gamma or mu to the game for future mechanics?
Yeah, so we had looked at that as, like I said, kind of some different avenues that we could work with in the design space. But again, we decided to go against that. It felt a little wonky to use those Greek letters at the time, and I like the system we have in place now where we're utilizing the word cast. I think it's straightforward. I think it ties into the game that we're developing as well, in terms of the lore and just the world building of Elestrals. So I'm pretty happy where we landed with that.
I have to agree. Elestrals really does have such a good foundation where it is, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the lore ties into the word casting. However, would you revisit the concept later on down the line once Elestrals has established itself further in the CCG scene?
I would definitely revisit the idea, but I think in a different context. I think the first idea that it comes to mind is if we were to create the same Elestral but wanted to create kind of a new version of it, you could call it, Foamy Omega, for example, or whatever it may be. I think that there's an opportunity for us to utilize some of the Greek alphabet or Greek letters in that context in terms of naming convention or form convention. I don't think you'll see it in the context of text descriptions or effects and abilities, but who knows?
It'll definitely be interesting to see if you revisit the idea later on down the line and what form it'll take based off of that sentence alone. So, is there anything I might have missed that you would like to tell anybody about the mechanic, or is there anything else that you could think of that, you might want to say at this point?
No, I think that that's pretty straightforward. Like I said, I thought that this was something that we had explored at one point in development, but it wasn't something that really made it too much further than 2 or 3 mocks, and me not liking the visual aspect of it and not feeling like it helped in the confusion aspect of it. I wanted to make something that was easy for players to understand, easy for players to pick up, and I actually felt that the letters, in the context that we're trying to use them for, actually complicated things, so we just scrapped it entirely.
Thank you so much for your time, Dan, and your help venturing into the history of Elestrals. We hope to see you in the Emporium again. So now that we have a better understanding of the scrap mechanic, what do you think? Should Elestrals have kept this mechanic? Is it a good thing they scrapped it? How would you refresh it if you could? Tell me all that and more in the comment section down below, and be sure to subscribe for even more Elestrals content. Thanks for stopping by the Elestrals Emporium. Please come again.